Let's think about another example where if we're not careful about how we account for things, we might end up with distortions in the system that are the exact opposite of what we're trying to achieve. So let's imagine we're either the superintendent or maybe we're the principal of a school, and we think that a lot of emphasis, that more resources should be spent in core classes. And let's just say it's our philosophy that more resources should be spent in math classes. So let's say that there is an algebra class in my school. So I consider this to be a core class. I think this is an important subject that students need to know going forward. And let's say that there's also a pottery class. Let's say that there is also a pottery class. This is clearly a non-core subject. Non-core. I'm not saying that it's not important. It's nice for the students to learn pottery. There might be some type of artistic expression there, but it's not going to be as helpful for the students in getting into college and eventually being productive members of whatever job they might end up doing. So I want to really focus here. So with that in mind, I, as the principal or the superintendent, I make sure that we spend more resources per student on the algebra course. And the way we do that is we say that we lower the student-teacher ratio. We say for every 20 students, we have one teacher. We have one teacher. And then on the pottery course, we can loosen it up a little bit more. So at the pottery course, for every 30 students, so this is the pottery situation. For every 30 students, we put one teacher. And we'll feel pretty good about ourselves. We're now focusing more on core subjects, devoting more resources per student here because of this lower student-teacher ratio. Now let's think about it a little bit. It would be the case that we're spending more resources per student on the algebra course than the pottery course if all teachers were getting paid the same. But the reality in many school districts, and later here I'll show you some data from a school district, the reality in many school districts, and we've seen this before, that if you have your junior, let me do it over here. On one side, you have your junior faculty, people who maybe have just come out of college or a couple of years out of college. And then it's a tenure-based system. You become more and more senior. The more senior you are, so let me write senior. The more senior you are, you have money. And you have more choice on what you get to teach. And it so happens that in most or in many school districts, you have this situation that senior faculty would prefer to teach non-core classes. And on the other side, at the junior faculty side, the people who can teach core classes, especially core classes in the maths and sciences, because they're junior, they get paid less. But these are people who know mathematics, who know physics, who know chemistry. They also have other career options. So it turns out that you actually have more attrition. And I'm not saying this is true in all school districts, but in many school districts, you have more attrition, which means you have more turnover, more attrition in core math science class. You have the situation where someone graduates with an engineering degree or a math degree or a physics degree. They want to teach. They go teach in the public school system for a year or two. But then an employer comes and offers to pay them double or triple using those same skills to actually go into the private sector. So they say, hey, that's a good deal because over here I was junior faculty. I wasn't get paid much. So that job opening happens. And then the district or the school will go hire another junior faculty, someone else who just graduated with a math or engineering or science degree. But the overall situation is that the people teaching the core math and science classes will be junior and they will be paid less. So in our situation, this little example that I've thought up, let's say, and this is the case in many school systems, not always, but let's say that my algebra teacher is someone who just came out of school, someone with a math degree, and they're getting paid $30,000 a year. They're getting paid $30,000 per year, the teacher. And let's say the pottery course is taught by a very good pottery teacher, but she's been in the school system for 30 years. She's very senior at this point. She loves pottery. That's why she chose to teach the pottery class. And so because she spent so much time in the system, she's making $60,000 a year. $60,000 a year. Now let's think about what the actual per pupil cost is, at least from the point of view of the teacher's salary. There's obviously other costs in terms of supplies and technology and all of that. And frankly, even there, pottery, there's probably more expense in terms of supplies and things like that. But let's just think about just from a teacher salary point of view. Here we're spending $30,000 on a teacher per year to teach 20 students. So on a per student basis, on a per student basis, how much are we spending? So $30,000 divided by 20, that is $1,500 per student. $1,500 per student in this core class, this class that I, as the superintendent or the principal, have said is more important for kids to get into college or whatever else. And how much are we spending per student on the pottery course? Well, the $60,000 salary for that senior teacher divided by 30 students is $2,000. $2,000 per student. So I want to be clear. I'm not saying that this is happening in every school district. And I won't even make the statement on which is more important. I'm just saying that unless how we report for salaries and how we account for things isn't made clear, we can actually end up with having unintended distortions. The example here was an administrator who wanted to emphasize algebra. They lowered the student to teacher ratio relative to the non-core classes. But because the core math and science classes tend to get taught by junior faculty, they still were spending a lot less, $500 less per student on a core class, on the algebra class, than they would spend on their pottery class. And I want to be clear, this is not just, some random made up example that I had. I mean, I did make up those numbers just there, but I want to show you that this is actually happening. So this is a chart. The author is Marguerite Rosa. It's from a presentation that she produced. And this shows teacher salary differences were more important than differences in class size in explaining the higher per pupil cost of instruction in non-core courses in one mid-sized eastern district. And so she actually went through that district, looked at the salaries, looked at what classes were core, looked at what classes were non-core, compared the class sizes, and she saw that non-core classes in that district, in that mid-sized eastern district, they were spending $1,200 per student on non-core classes and $950 per student in core classes. So the takeaway here is you have these distortions. We might be inadvertently spending less resources on core classes that we want to. And the really big takeaway is that we really should make sure that when we account for things, we have the granular data so that this surfaces to the administrators.